Hello everyone guys, good morning to you everyone. And so today basically we have explained lots of things in our deep learning series, right? And we have attended some three or four couples of sessions already. Now guys, I think so today from today, so I'm going to start I think this topics ahead. So basically in our previous sessions we have discussed about various things like as feed forward connections, backward propagations, again how training is going to get happened in side neural networks. So lots of things guys we have explained. Now again one topic I think it's missing. So actually there was some kind of difficulty I was facing in drawing some kind of graphs and showing you some kind of equations. So for that one I was thinking that okay fine, so I have to create one another video in which I am going to show you each and everything in a very detailed manner, like as maybe how a gradient descent thing is going to happen, and how actually you are going to update all of the weights. I think I have explained all of those things in a layman way, but again for a second layer, for a third layer, whatever parameters we are having, so how, in which way we are going to update them, and what should be the differential equations. So each and everything we will try to show, we will try to see in that session, right? So that particular session will be uploaded later, in later stage, because I think I have to actually do some kind of extra works for that one. But basically in today's session I will just start activation functions, right? So first of all try to navigate yeah, to our notebook part. So I will just go with our terminal, and yeah, just wait for some seconds. So I think my terminal is, yeah, going to be open. So from here again here again code, right? And then I will try to go with a deep learning, right? So I think this is the hierarchy actually I'm following. So I have lots of files in that one. I have to just go into this deep learning file, right? So that is fine. Now here I will try to open our Jupyter notebook. Again, Jupyter lab or notebook, anything you can try to open. Both thing is similar, but yeah. Yes, I think it has been opened, right? Now what I will try to do, so I will just navigate to this one, and yeah, fine. So it's just opening, guys. So see, so in our previous session I was talking about how a back propagation is going to be happen inside a neural networks architecture, right? And whenever back propagation occurs, so in a feed forward connection we are going to involve, maybe just to try to get that figure, right? That detailed figure, detailed diagram of neural networks architecture, yeah, this one. So when feed forward connection is in its progress, so in that time actually what was happening, so we are going to assign some kind of activation functions, right? And those activation functions will try to do some kind of maybe processing, some kind of operations over our data. And in that sequence we are going to pass each and everything throughout each and every layers, and in a very final layer, in output layer, we are going to generate some kind of outputs, and then we are going to utilize that output to calculating our loss function. Now guys, whenever we will be able to calculate the losses, then what is actually going to be happen? So in that case we are going to utilize that loss, and then we are going to use this send this particular loss for optimization, and in that one we are going to choose one kind of optimizers, maybe any optimizers, and then we will try to update each and every weights in each and every layers in a backward order, right? This was the thing that we have discussed in terms of maybe a backward propagation, guys. So whenever we are going to do this back propagation, so we all know that there is a kind of a chain rule we are going to utilize. There is a kind of I can say differential equations that we are going to utilize, because this particular loss is depending upon this one, again this will depend upon this one, this inputs, this will depend upon this weights. So in that case we are going to introduce each and every, I can say respective or maybe consecutive layers or consecutive terms in finding out our next values of these parameters, right? So now in that manner, this activation functions are going to play a very vital role, because so again we will try to look again how these things are going to happen. See, so whenever we are going to differentiate these things, so in that case, whatever processings we are going to get from these activation functions, we are supposed to differentiate all of those things. So our activation functions should be a kind of a mathematical function which should be differentiable, right? And it should give a kind of, I can say, differentials at each and every point of time. If it is not giving, maybe you will be facing some kind of issues. And if some functions, maybe suppose that there is a function and you are going to use this as a activation function inside your layers, right? Now if this function is not going to give you differentials, then I think it's not a correct, it's not a ideal activation function, right? So we will try to look all of those things, and again then we will try to move forward, and we will see some multiple activation functions available for our use cases. So again, these are the heavy clumsy mathematics that you have to go. So again I will just try to give this whole notebook, and then you can go with these things. So activation functions. Activation functions are a kind of function which helps a neuron to fire itself in a certain direction, in a certain bandwidth, or in a certain range. It also try to restrict some sort of data set. So actually what is happening? So see, so suppose there is a human being and he is sitting somewhere or maybe standing somewhere, and suppose so there would be some kind of activities is going on. Maybe a mosquito is going to bite that human being, maybe in his feet or maybe in his hand. Then after biting of that mosquito, what is going to happen? So there would be some kind of sensation that would get rise into that part of body, and that sensation will try to activate some kind of neurons which will be lying in that place. Now some of the neurons will getting fire itself, they will be in a, I can say, in a active state, and now due to their effects, each and every other neurons which are consecutively connected with these neurons, they all will be getting fired, they all will be getting activated. And in this sequence, that particular sensation, that particular sense signal is getting passed throughout our brain, and then our brain is going to function each and everything, and then we are going to do some kind of maybe will be able to take some kind of decisions, or maybe able to do some kind of activities, right? So in that way this kind of activity is going to get happen inside our body. The same thing is happening here. So activation functions are a kind of function which helps a neuron to fire itself. So whatever data is coming inside a neuron, so if we are not going to do any kind of a specific operations inside that neuron, inside that node, then what is the essence, what is the significance of passing that particular data with those neurons, right? So we have to do some kind of operations, and in that way these activation functions will help a neuron to fire itself in a certain direction, not in every direction, just in a certain direction, in a certain bandwidth, or in a certain range. It also try to restrict some sort of data set. We will try to come later at this point. Activation functions helps to determine the output of a neural network. So if a data is getting inputted to inside a neuron, or maybe a neural networks, maybe, or maybe any node, so in that case these activation functions will help in determining that, okay fine, so what would be its output if we are going to perform any kind of calculation, any kind of activity. So what will be its output? So this will help. This type of functions are attached to each neurons in the network and determines whether it should be activated or not. Yeah, so we are going to utilize kind of function, activation functions in each and every neurons, in each and every layer, and it will determine whether this neuron should be activated or not, because it is not like that so each and every neuron will activate it at the same point of time, right? So there will be some kind of a possibility, there would be some kind of conditions, some kind of maybe requirements, and on that basis it will try to activate that particular neuron. Now, based on whether each neuron's input is relevant for the model's prediction or not. Yeah, so there are some kind of conditions it will try to, satisfy, and then maybe it will try to activate that neuron. We will come later in this, on this point. Now, activation function also helps to normalize the output of each neuron to a range between 1 and 0 or between 1 and this one. So again, there is a case that whenever we are going to apply a kind of activation function over the data, it always going to normalize the output, or maybe the data, whatever data we are going to pass through the neuron. So these functions are going to normalize them. So I think from your childhood, maybe your machine learning classes, so we have studied about lots of kinds of transformations, maybe normalization, maybe standardization. So these are some kind of transformation techniques where we are supposed to scale down our data set in a certain range, because there is a chance, there is a huge possibility that, okay, fine, this is a particular, maybe a place where there are millions of neurons. Some neurons will be, sorry, actually not in this case, so let me talk about some another analogy. So yeah, so suppose that we are having some kind of a data, right? So in that data, some kind of features are having a very higher values, some kind of features are very having lower values, right? So whenever we are going to do modeling, whenever we are going to fit any kind of architecture over our data, it is a very much complicated task that it would fit our data. And maybe in a terms of a calculation of distances, maybe in terms of doing gradient descent, or maybe in terms of calculating the differentials in each and every activities, if the values of data set should be too much high or too much low, in that case you are going to face lots of difficulties. And for avoiding this kind of problems, we people have introduced this normalization kind of techniques, maybe normalization or maybe standardization. So there is a thinner difference between this normalization and standardization. So basically, maybe in terms of machine learning, so there is a some place where normalizations would be required, and there are some places where standardizations would be required. So there are some kind of algorithms which suppose that, okay, fine, I will only try to work over those kind of data which will be in form of a normal distribution or maybe a Gaussian distribution. So see, there is a kind of a normal distribution or maybe a Gaussian distribution which is having a distribution in a shape of bell-shaped curve, right, bell-shaped curve. So if your data is having a normal distribution or maybe a Gaussian distribution, in that case we will be going with normalization. This standardization is a special case of normalization where we are trying to bring down our data set in a such a range that its mean should lie over origin and its standard deviation should be equal to 1. So I think in this way we can try to define this normalization and maybe a standardization. So both are the things. So here this activation function also helps to normalize the output of each neuron to a range between this, right? So in a certain range it will try to normalize your data. Now neural networks use non-linear activation functions which can help the network learn complex data, compute and learn almost any function representing a question and provide accurate predictions. See, so actually this is saying that, so whatever activation functions, so basically activation functions are kind of mathematical functions. So it is saying that whatever activation functions we are going to utilize for our trading, those activations functions should be non-linear in each and every time. It should be non-linear, right? Because maybe there is a huge possibility that we are not going to do anything with a kind of a linear data set, right? So if if I can try to recall about your linear regression classes, so linear regression algorithm is only assumed to be used, to be implemented in such a situation where your data set should be linearly separable, or maybe there should be a pattern, a linear pattern available inside your data points. Unless and until there is no any linear relationship, we are not going to fit linear regression. Again, we can fit, but it will not give you a good accuracy. And see, here in this deep learning, in this neural networks concept, so there is a huge possibility that maybe you are going to deal with various kinds of data, maybe there is a huge possibility that data will not be linear. It should be non-linear in each and every point of time. So for dealing with those kind of data, if you are going to use a linear kind of activation functions, it will be not able to handle the complexity of data, and in that case your accuracy is not going to be, idle. You are not going to get a good accuracy, and in that case you will just end up losing with a very, worst model. And so that's why people have introduced a non-linear kind of activation functions here in that case, right? So we will try to come over some different kinds of activation functions, maybe in terms of a linear, also maybe in terms of a binary functions, and then we will try to explain about some kind of maybe non-linear activation functions, guys. So I think this class would is going to be I can say lots of again it should be interesting one, right? So just try to stick, try to focus here, try to focus on my words and on the screen, and then you will be get very good knowledge, ample of knowledge in terms of each and every activation functions and its significance, its importance and its working theory, right? So there are lots of things that, guys, we have to we have to think, we have to study. So the activation function is the mathematical gate in between the input feeding the current neuron and its output going to the next layer. It can be as simple as a step, this one, right? Yeah. So what is actually happening? So from this one there is a kind of linear input, linear input, linear input, I mean linear mix of inputs. We are trying to add each and every linear inputs here, I mean sum them up. After summation, this particular summed up, this particular aggregated result will getting passed through this if activation function, right? And then this should be the output, which can be getting passed with some other next neuron. So guys, in that case I can say activation function is going to work. Now we will try to come upon this different things, right? So if I can talk about there are 3 different types of activation functions available. But again, guys, just wait for 2 minutes. Just I'm going to pause the video and then I will come back, right? Yeah, guys, so basically, so if we can talk about activation functions, so first of all we will just start with a very basic one, right? Like as a linear activation functions. So again in a very beginning time, so people were using a linear regression kind of things, and then in that point of time, so they have just introduced they were thinking, okay, fine, so again in terms of a linear regression we are going to introduce a linear kind of function. So here again we can go with a linear function and there will not be any kind of a problem. So see, linear activation functions is coming to picture here. And what is the linear function? So this is known as linear function. Y will be mx plus c. This is the equation of a straight line, and this type of a function, linear function, we are going to utilize for our in terms of a linear activation functions. So linear activation functions always defines a linear relationship between this this one. Differentials of a linear function gives some constant, so it can be used in back propagation, but a linear activation function is not able to handle the complexity of data, like as it will get filled in cases of image recognitions or more. See, so what people were thinking, so whenever you are going to select a kind of activation functions for your use case, so in that case people were introducing, okay, fine, so we can try to use this linear activation function y will be mx plus c, we can try to use, right? Where in this equation m will be the slope, m will be this slope, I mean slope means what? Slope means change in y with respect to x, and this c should be intercept. C is intercept means what? Means that at what point of y this line is intersecting the y-axis, or at which point this line is intersecting y-axis. So here in this case this line is passing through the origin, I can say, and in that case our c will be 0 and m will be having some kind of value, so maybe it will depend again. So if I can try to pass this line on this maybe in this position, there will be some different kind of equation, maybe m and c is going to change. So there are 2 different parameters m and c which will be responsible for drawing your straight lines, right? Now people have people were thinking, okay, fine, so we can use this equation, this linear equation, as our activation function, and they were giving a logic that, okay, fine, so in terms of a linear activation functions again yeah, so we can use it. And if you have to select a kind of activation function, so there is only one condition. That condition is that if your activation function, if any kind of function is giving you a differentials at any point of time, then you can directly use that particular function as your activation functions, because whenever you are trying to do back propagation, so in back propagation in each and every layers you are going to differentiate your activation functions, right? So whenever you are going to differentiate this particular thing, right, this equation, so what will be the answer? So in that case we are going to differentiate this dy upon dx, maybe this line, this equation in with respect to x, right? So in that case dy upon dx will be what? So dy upon dx will be differentiation of this quantity, where I can say this m should be your slope, this c should be your intercept. And in that case actually what we are trying to do, so in that case guys, m should be slope, and whenever you are going to do this differentiation you are going to get y will be mx, sorry, y will be m, means a kind of a constant value you are going to get. I think guys there is a very much disturbances, so again people are just trying to do some kind of arguments, I don't know, just wait for some time guys. Yeah, so whenever you are going to calculate the differential of this equation, so at any point of time it is going to give you y will be m, where m is a kind of a scalar value maybe, or maybe a constant value. So c will be going to get 0 equal to 0, and x will be 1, and then m into 1, so y will be m, or maybe dy upon dx will equal to m, right? So in terms of calculating the differential of this equation you are going to get m. So differentials of a linear activation function gives some constant, so it can be used in back propagation, so there is no any problem, we can use it. But then people were facing a kind of issue. So whenever they were going to use this kind of a linear activation functions in terms of maybe a image recognition, maybe a kind of image classification, in that kind of use cases they were not be able to handle the complexity of data, because whenever we can talk about images, maybe text data, in that case there will not be any kind of linear relationship, and if there will be not be any kind of a linear relationship, then we can't use all linear activation functions in that point of time, right? So people have introduced this one, but it was getting failed. Then they have come to this point, okay fine, so we can go with this binary step activation function. And what is this? So this binary step activation function always gives its output in a range 0 and 1. So see, this is the graph of this binary step activation function. So for a negative kind of input it is going to give you what? A negative value. And for a 0 it will for a 0 or maybe for any kind of positive number, it is going to give you some kind of maybe a positive number or maybe equal to 0. So this kind of thing it is going to give you. So it is always going to give you output in the range 0 and 1. See, 0 and 1. This is the range of this function. For negative x it is always gives 0, and for positive x it gives 1. It can handle two classes. Yeah, it can handle two classes, maybe 0 and 1 in terms. So but its derivative is always 0. So see, derivative means that, so we are going to find out that in this function what is the change of y with respect to x. If I am going to change the x, if I am going to increase the value of x, then what kind of change I am going to see in terms of y. If I am going to change the values of x, then what would be the change I will suppose to see in terms of y. So how your y is changing with respect to x. So see here, if you are going to increase this x, is there any kind of a change in y you are going to get? If there will be any kind of y, this line will not try to follow the x-axis line, or maybe this line, right? This will try to move forward, move upward, but nothing, there is no any kind of change. Here at this particular point, if I can talk about x will be 0, so at x will be 0, between this point x will be negative minus infinity to 0, it is giving you a very it is giving you a 0 change, no any change in y. But at x will be 0, this particular point, it will try to give you what? It will try to give you, I can say, a kind of maybe see here what would be the change. So here if I am going to add x will be 0, if I am going to change this value, so here in this case is any kind of change I am going to get? No, not. And again from here again 0, so its derivative is always 0, so this function is not proper for using in backward propagation. And then they have just left this function because it's not any kind of good for your use cases, right? Then again, non-linear activation functions comes to picture. So non-linear activation functions are able to understand the complexity of data set, and also it gives some differentials which gets used in backpropagation to update the parameters. So we generally uses non-linear activation functions in deep learning, right? So then people come to a point that, okay, fine, so again using this kind of things, maybe a linear or maybe a binary kind of functions, it's not possible. And again we are not going to solve our problems, and again it is going to give me some kind of issues. So then they have come to this point, okay, fine, now we have to go with the non-linear activation functions, which will give some kind of differentials, as well as it can be used to handle the complexity of data at any point of time. Now if we can talk about some multiple non-linear activation functions which can be used in a deep learning, so there is a sigmoid, very beginning function, very old function, tanh hypertangent function, hypertangent, ReLU function, Licky ReLU, P ReLU, E ReLU, softmax, softplus, Swiss, maxout. And this is all I can say 8 and 9 functions we are going to 10 functions we are going to study in this session, right? So first of all, guys, in the very beginning, people were going to use this kind of sigmoid function. Again, there is a mistake here in terms of a sigmoid, right? So yeah, so this is your sigmoid function, right? Yeah. So the sigmoid function is the most frequently used activation function in the beginning of deep learning. For every input value, it gives output in a range 0 to 1. See, this is the equation of your sigmoid function. So sigmoid fx will be 1 upon 1 plus e to the power minus x. This is the equation of sigmoid function, and it is always going to give you its output in a range 0 to 1. So for negative kind of data, it will try to give some kind of maybe 0 or maybe 1 or maybe any kind of output value it will try to give you in just in the range 0 to 1. See, whenever we are going to differentiate this function, so again I think this is a kind of I can say calculation, maybe in terms of differential. So see, sigma x will be this one, then we will try to differentiate it both sides, so d by dx upon this one. Then here I will try to do what? Here I will try to rationalize it, right? Maybe, or not rationalize it. So here I will try to actually we are going to divide we are going to differentiate this one, and then in that case we are going to get this kind of expression. Again, guys, we are going to take a common this 1 from this one, and then 1 plus to the power minus x from this denominator side. And then in that case d by dx upon this one will be in that case maybe here what we are trying to do. So here we are just trying to here e to the power minus x is already right, so we are trying to add and subtract 1. Now after this one, so I will just try to go with this kind of maybe expression where 1 minus this one, and then here sigma dash x will be, or maybe f dash x will be fx into 1 minus fx, right? So this would be a kind of, I can say, differential, maybe a function which I'm going to get after that differentiating this sigmoid function. So we are going to get some kind of maybe output when we are going to differentiate these things, right? And this is the graph. This this blue line is sigmoid graph, right? So it will try to cross this y-axis on 0.5, right? And for a negative values, it is going to give you output in between this minus infinity to 0 in this range, right? And for maybe I can say in that case, in a positive number, it will try to give you in this range. So basically it will be when if I can talk about maybe it's a different it's output, so it should only in terms of maybe 0 to 1, because again this is the 0. This function is not going down from this x-axis, so 0 will be your minimum value and 1 will be your maximum value. This would be its range, output range, right? Again, sigmoid function was fine. I was getting each and everything. So there would maybe some kind of advantages, maybe some kind of disadvantages also. So in terms of a sigmoid function, guys, we are going to get a smooth gradient at any point, preventing jumps in output values. Yeah. So see, so at each and every point of time, there is a kind of, I can say, increment, a kind of a change in y value with respect to x. If we are going to change the value of x, must be a change in y values as well. Now output values bound between 0 and 1, right? Yeah, normalizing the output of each neuron. Yeah, so whatever data you are trying to pass with this function, whatever data, whatever in whatever range, it is always going to normalize your data set and scale down in a range between 0 to 1. Now clear prediction set is very close to 0 or 1, so it is always going to give you maybe a 0 or maybe a 1. So in that case its output should be in a range in 0 to 1, and in that case it is a very good in case of a binary classification, in a two class classification. Now there are some kind of a disadvantages also. So this leads to vanishing gradient problem. This leads to gradient saturation or dispersing problem. Function output is not zero centered and time consuming and slower for computers due to using exponential operation. See, what is vanishing gradient problem? We will see here. What is gradient saturation? We will see here. And non-zero centric problem? We will see. But again, if we can talk about this time consuming and slower for computers, so here see. So in a sigmoid function, we are going to introduce this kind of e to the power minus x, maybe a exponential kind of operation here. And due to this exponential operation, it is going to slow very operatively. I mean operating very slowly, right? And so it is going to take your huge computational time, maybe resources also, and it is very slow. So these are the disadvantages. Again, if I can talk about vanishing gradient problem, so what is this? So in a back propagation, derivatives of each previous layers have some contribution in updating the weights of next layers, and we use a chain rule to update the weights. And derivatives of sigmoid function ranges between this to this, right? So see, whenever we are going to do the back propagation and whenever we are going to do some kind of a weight updation, so in each and every layers we are going to utilize the the weights of previous layers as well, the changes of previous layers as well. And in that case the derivatives of sigmoid function always ranging between 0 to 0.25. see here this one. So in each and every layer its value is getting reduced to a very lower number, and if you are going to have too much layers, maybe a 10 layer, 20 layer, 100 layers, 1000 layers, in that case as its back propagation will get progress, maybe after 4 layer, 5 layer, 10 layer, 20 layer, there should be a very minimal change or there should be a no change, and whatever gradients you are going to calculate on that basis, you will not be able to do any kind of weight updation. And this was a very huge problem of this vanishing gradient, because your gradients, whatever thing you are going to get learn by using this back propagation, you will not be able to learn anything in that case whenever you are having too much layers. So when sigmoid functions are getting used as activation functions in deep neural networks, its derivatives are getting decreases during updating of weights in each layer. In case of a deep neural networks, when back propagation reaches to the last layer, derivative of sigmoid function gives a very small value near to 0, and so there will be very minute change or no changes in the weights in the last layer of network, and this problem is known as vanishing gradient problem, and this is a very big major problem guys in terms of back propagation. In 1980s or 1990s, sigmoid function is the only activation function that people uses, and they don't have too many layers in their neural networks. They just deal with 2 or 3 layered neural networks to avoiding this vanishing gradient problem, and that's why they will not be able to get a very good kind of accuracy, right? So if somebody is going to ask you in an interview that, okay fine, what is your understanding about vanishing gradient problem, or maybe if you are going to talk about this disadvantages of a sigmoid function, in that case you have to introduce this problem, right? So in that way this was the problem. Again, there is a non-zero centric problem. So functions having its center lying on the origin are termed as zero centric function. Sigmoid function is not zero centric function. So this is saying that whatever functions we are having, if its center is lying on this origin, then that function will be zero centric function. But here sigmoid is not like that one. So yeah, when we uses a zero centric function as activation function, it will try to control the changes or updates in a gradients in a backward direction. So again, there is some kind of maybe a mathematically, a mathematical property. So if you are going to use a kind of non-zero centric function, maybe a zero centric function, it will be going to give you some kind of maybe a control over the changing or maybe weights in terms of I can say in a specific direction. So it is very much required. In case of a non-zero centric function, gradient updates will go in a different directions, and it will make our optimization much more harder because it is not able to maintain the consistency in a gradient updates, and so every time its value fluctuates and gives a different value. So that's why, guys, we are always supposed to take pick and choose a kind of activation function which will be zero centric one, right? Zero centered one. Now, gradient saturation or gradient dispersing problem. So when inputs are away from the coordinate origin, the gradient of the function becomes very small, almost zero. In process of neural network backpropagation, we all use the chain rule of this one when the backpropagation. See, so actually in terms of a gradient, so there is a vanishing gradient problem, and again there is a second problem, that is a gradient dispersing or maybe gradient saturation. So what is happening here in this case? So gradient saturation means that again vanishing gradient was occurring due to your activation function, right? So if your activation function is good enough, it is not getting it is not coming to picture. But this gradient saturation problem is not actually occurring due to your activation function, but it is occurring due to the values of the parameters whatever you are going to initialize. So see, whenever we are going to talk about some kind of parameters, so in the very first beginning, in the very first epoch, when we are going to start our training, in that case each and every parameters in each and every layers are getting assigned with some kind of a random values, and in that case there may be a kind of a gradient saturation problem, because see, whenever we are going to do backpropagation, we are going to multiply each and every products. So in that case, if your gradients root having a very high number, in that case you will not be able to calculate a very good change, or maybe I can say very smooth change in your parameters, and in that case this will try to create a problem and you will not be able to do any kind of learning in a right way. So I think this is the gradient saturation problem, and for this one, so we can try to initialize our, I can say, parameters in a good way. Again, there are some kind of maybe a default way, like as maybe initialization, or maybe lots of there are ways to initialize your parameter weights in a very first beginning. So we can go with that one. Again, for more details you can try to visit here again. So yeah, now tanh or hyperbolic tangent function. So tanh or hyperbolic tangent function, so is a modified version of the sigmoid function. So people who were using sigmoid function in the very first beginning, so they were thinking, okay, fine, so sigmoid is good, there are some pros, some cons, but now we will try to modify this particular function according to our need. So they have modified this particular sigmoid function, and the see, this is the sigmoid function. Now they have modified, they have bring down this function onto this origin level. So now this tanh function will be a kind of a zero centric problem, right? And the equation of tanh will be this one, e to the power x minus e to the power minus x upon e to the power x plus e to the power minus x. This is the equation of your hypertangent function. So guys, in that case, what we can try to do, so the output interval of tanh will be -1 to 1. So here we are only going to get 0 to 1, but in that case it is going to give you -1 to 1 output in this range, which is better than sigmoid, and again a non-zero centric function as well. So tanh function can be represented in terms of a sigmoid. So basically this is the representation of a tanh in forms of a sigmoid function. Now derivative, so derivative wise again we can try to calculate its derivative. So in that case its derivative will be this one, d upon dz will be 1 minus a square, and a will be what? A will be tanh z. So 1 minus square of tanh z function, or maybe this function, right? So yeah, so this is your tanh, and this should be your derivative again, which is a very much, I can say, similar to your sigmoid's derivative. So in that case it is going to work. Now in general binary classification problem, so whenever you are going to do some kind of classification problem, maybe for two classes, binary classes, so tanh function is used for the hidden layers, and sigmoid function is used for the output layers, right? However, these are not static, and the specific activation function to be used must be analyzed according to the specific problem. Yeah, again it will depend. It will depend upon your use cases, upon your data, upon your requirements. So you can try to use all of them. Now comparing to sigmoid function, tan h is a zero centered function, but still it leads to vanishing gradient problem. Yeah, so again similar kind of concept, similar kind of theme we are going to use inside a tan h function, and so that's why there are some pros again in terms of maybe a zero centric one. Again in terms of cons, there are similar cons similar to that one sigmoid function. So basically we can use it. Then people have discovered, then people have they have actually released one another function, that is rectified linear unit or a ReLU function. So ReLU or rectified linear unit function is defined as a function that takes the maximum value and outputs in a range 0 to plus infinity. And this function is not fully interval derivable, but we can take subgradients. So see, this is the equation of ReLU function, right? What people have derived. So for negative of x, if your input is negative, in that case it is always going to give you a 0. But if your data is, if your input is equal to 0 or maybe positive, in that case it is going to give you maximum of your data, means maximum of 0 to x it is going to give you. Again in terms of a derivative, so negative of x, it is always going to give you 0, but for positive x it is going to give you a 1. And this is the equation of a ReLU function. So a similar linear kind of I can say a function it is going to give you, because it is going to give you some kind of maybe I can say differential at any point of time for any data which is equal to 0 or maybe positive. But for negative of data, negative of x, it is always going to give you 0, right? And this the property of giving derivative as equal to 0, this is known as dying problem of ReLU, which is very much popular and which is a very major problem in terms of a ReLU, because this ReLU will give you a very good result in terms of a positive data or maybe data equal to 0. But whenever we can talk about a negative data, it is going to give you always 0. And so people says that here our ReLU is getting died, it is not going to give you any kind of result. So now advantages of ReLU function. So overcome with gradient saturation or vanishing gradient problem. Here using this function we are going to overcome with this both problems, gradient saturation and vanishing gradient. Where the input is positive, it always gives a gradient, but in case of negative input, negative input gives a gradient, but in case of negative input it gives y as 0, so no any gradient. So if data will be, if input will be negative, there will not be any kind of change, and your I can say in that case you will not be able to do any kind of a learning in that case. Now ReLU function not activates all neurons at a time, means that if any linear combination of inputs are negative, then it will restrict that neuron to fire itself and gives output as 0. Maybe in a next iteration, if there will be a positive input, then it will fire the neuron. This property is very important in feed forward connection. See what is happening here. So guys, see, so whenever we are going to get some kind of maybe, so see, whenever we are going to pass any kind of a data inside a neuron in a hidden layer, and if we are going to use their ReLU function, so if there the linear combination of inputs are -1, then this ReLU will restrict that neuron to fire itself. So I was talking about that activation function is responsible for restricting a neuron, right? So in this case, it will try to assume some kind of condition, and on basis of that condition, it is going to restrict that particular neuron. So see what is actually happening in this case. So first of all, just wait. Yeah, see. Here, suppose we are using a ReLU function. Now here we are going to get a input, a linear mix of inputs from this connection, this connection, this connection, this connection. So 4 different linear mix of inputs we are going to get, and the summation is Z1, 1, 1. Now, if this summation, if this input, if this Z111 is equal to, maybe sorry, if this is negative, if this is a negative number, then in that case this neuron is not going to, sorry, this ReLU activation function will not going to fire this particular neuron, right? So see, actually what is happening, so in a very first place we have assigned some random numbers, right? Random numbers. So in a very first epoch, in a very first iteration, each and everything will get passed, nothing will happen. Then after calculating the loss, we will try to update each and every parameters. Now with the updated parameters, we will try to do the feed forward connection again. Now in this time, we have updated each and every weights. Now in this time, if this particular input will be equal to a negative input or maybe less than 0, in that case, this neuron will not getting fired. If this will be positive, it will get fired. Again, if it will be negative, it will not get fired. If this will be positive, it will get fired. Not positive, not get fired. So in that case, guys, so see, whenever we are trying to get some kind of pattern, or maybe, you know, or track some kind of pattern inside the data, so these weights, these parameters are helping in this way. They will try to restrict some of the connections. So this is the connection, right guys? This is the connection. And if it is going to restrict this particular neuron, in that case, it is going to silent this particular connection. There will be no any kind of data flow from this node. It will be silent, right? In that case, it will be die. This neuron will get died. It will not give any kind of output in this case. So this is the a kind of, I can say, dying problem inside ReLU. Now, so come to that point. Yeah, fine. So ReLU. Yeah. So this is the ReLU. So again, ReLU function. Yeah, maybe in the next iteration, if there will be a positive input, then it will fire the neuron. Again, if there will be a negative input, it will not fire. This property is very important in feed forward connection, because whenever we are going to do feed forward connection, this property will be very important in making some kind of a pattern, or getting know that, okay, fine, whichever I can say parameters and whichever inputs are getting you know, making some kind of contribution for your target or output or not. So again, this is very much important. Now ReLU calculation speed is much faster because it has only a linear relationship forward or backward, and so it is much faster than sigmoid and tanh. So again, in terms of a sigmoid and maybe a hypertangent function, so you have to calculate the exponent function, right? So which result in a slower speed, slower calculation. But here ReLU is having to calculate only the linear relationship. In that one, it will be much faster. And whichever network you are going to use with a ReLU function, that will be much faster than as compared to your sigmoid or maybe a tanh based networks. Now, disadvantages of ReLU function. So when the input is negative, ReLU is completely inactive, which means that once a negative number is entered, ReLU will die. Yeah. In this way, in the forward propagation process, it is not a problem. Yeah, in a forward propagation, it will not be a problem. But some areas are sensitive and some are insensitive. But in the back propagation process, if you enter a negative number, the gradient will be completely zero, which has the same problem as the sigmoid function and tanh function. So I think this dying problem is a kind of a headache for us. And so this ReLU function is not a zero centric function again. So this kind of I can say cons we are going to get in a ReLU function. Now people have derived a new function, I can say, on top of this ReLU. So they have modified this ReLU and they have released Leaky ReLU. Leaky ReLU means that what? So Leaky ReLU is this is the function Leaky ReLU, right? So ReLU will be same for this one, right? For positive input it will be same, but for negative, ReLU will go over this line. But here in terms of a Leaky ReLU, we are not going to get this kind of a dying problem. We are going to get some kind of inputs here, maybe some kind of changes also here. So what it is trying to do, So Licky ReLU is a modified version of a ReLU function. For negative input, it gives some values of y. It is not giving you completely 0. It will give you some value of y. In order to solve the dead ReLU problem, people proposed to set the first half of ReLU 0.01x instead of 0. So they have introduced this particular constant number 0.01x. So if the inputs will be negative, in that case our ReLU is getting died. This will be a major problem for us, and for avoiding this one, they have introduced some kind of a constant value which is very much, I can say, nearby to 0 but not equal to 0. In that case, you will be able to get some kind of changes as well in terms of a negative data, and in this way its equation is getting defined. So for a positive of x, it will give you x, but for negative of x, it will give you this one, right? So Licky ReLU has all the advantages of ReLU, plus there will be no problems with dead ReLU, but in actual operation it has not been fully proved that Licky ReLU is always better than ReLU. So see, there are some kind of modifications people have to do, some kind of improvements, but it will depend. ReLU is good for you or a Licky ReLU is good for you. You can try to do experiments from your side, and whichever function is activation function is giving a better result, you can go with that one. Now there is a parametric ReLU. So now people have introduced okay fine. So in terms of a Licky ReLU, we have introduced 0.01x, but some people were arguing that okay fine, why 0.01x? We can try to assign any kind of value. So if you are assigning 0.01x, maybe there will be a huge possibility that maybe if we are going to give 0.05x or maybe 0.1x or maybe 0.2x, that would give me a better kind of accuracy, right? So those kind of people who were arguing with the value of this 0.01x, so they have modified this thing as well. So parametric ReLU or p-ReLU function is improvised version of Licky ReLU or maybe a ReLU. In the negative region, p-ReLU has a small slope, which can also avoid the problem of ReLU death, right? So again, in a ReLU, just a constant line, but in a Licky ReLU, they are going to get some kind of maybe some kind of a changes, right? Some kind of output. Now in terms of a p-ReLU, people have not given a kind of a fixed number. They have said no, actually it is not fine that okay fine, actually it's not a fine that we can give here a kind of a number. So it is always better that this particular this particular number will be a kind of a parameter, a self-tunable parameter, which this network is going to tune after doing some kind of experiments. In that way, it will try to have some kind of value depends upon the data, right? So whatever data is assuming, whatever data is requiring, it can try to assign that particular value, not 0.01x in each and every time. So in that case, p-ReLU has a small slope. All of the slope is small, it doesn't yeah, okay. So ReLU, p-ReLU, for p-ReLU, the coefficient of the negative part is not constant and is adaptively learned. So actually they have introduced here a parameter, a parameter. This a parameter will be getting tuned itself by the network, right? Its values would be anything, depend upon your data, depend upon your use cases. Now in p-ReLU, alpha is a learnable parameter which it learns by tuning. If alpha will be 0, this function becomes ReLU function. If alpha will be greater than 0, this function becomes Licky ReLU. If alpha is a learnable parameter, it becomes p-ReLU. So again, these are things, and again Licky ReLU and p-ReLU are just I can say modified version of a ReLU itself, variants of a ReLU. Now ELU, exponential linear units function. So here people have introduced okay fine, so for a positive of x we are going to get this one, but maybe in terms of negative, so people were thinking that okay fine, so we are trying to do this kind of implementation, maybe having some kind of a parametric result, but it is just only a kind of a, I can say a linear combination. So we are trying to do some kind of experiment. So okay fine, here we will try to introduce a kind of exponential equation or maybe exponential pattern. So they have introduced a kind of this relation. So alpha into e to the power x minus 1 So for negative, for positive x, it is x. But if your input is not positive, your function is going to give you this kind of result. So alpha into e to the power x minus 1, which would be the equation of this part. Now whenever we are going to differentiate this thing, so for this one we are going to get a constant value, right, df upon dx, and for this exponential function we are going to get this kind of maybe graph for its differential, right? Now advantages of ELU. So no dead neurons issues here. There is no any issue of dead neurons if input is negative. But yeah, ELU is a zero-centric function. Again, its center is lying upon this one, maybe on origin. So I think it is good always. Now disadvantages. So for negative inputs, ELU computation is expensively. If input is positive, it is going to give a very smooth result. But in terms of a negative input, it have to perform exponential computation, and this would be slower. This would be going to burn your lots of computational resources. So that's why these are the pros and cons of ELU function. Now there is a softmax function, guys. So softmax function is used for multi-class classifications in output layers. So see, in output layers we are going to use some kind of functions which will be able to give you some kind of outputs, final outputs. So if there is a binary class classification, we can use sigmoid. If there will be multiple class classification, we can use softmax. Again, sigmoid is also getting used for multiple class classification, but again in a deep learning we can go with this softmax function and it's completely fine. In a machine learning, in a logistic regression, we can use a one versus rest concept for a I can say for a multi-class classification, but here in terms of deep learning we can use softmax, and it is used for getting the probabilities for different multiple classes among. So see, this is the equation of softmax. So what we are trying to do, we are trying to calculate. So suppose there are maybe k classes, k different classes. So see, for a cat class, if I have to calculate the probability, then what I am trying to do, I will try to calculate the exponential of this cat class, and then I will try to divide this particular number with the summation of exponentials of each and every classes. Suppose there are 10 classes, so we are going to calculate the classes of each and every 10 different classes, and then we are going to sum them up, and then we will try to divide. In that case we are going to get the probability. Okay, fine, this particular object will belongs to which one class, and this is the equation. So fx will be, or maybe sx will be, e to the power xi upon summation k will be 1 to k e to the power xk, right, where j will be, or maybe I will be equal to 1 to 2k. Okay, now softmax is different from the normal max function. The max function only, again, so see, softmax is having some kind of name, softmax, but again there is a normal max function. The max function only outputs the largest value, but softmax ensures that the smaller values have a smaller probability. And see, so softmax will always try to give you probability value, probabilistic values. Again, if it is having some kind of a max word in its name, but it is not completely fine, it is not going to give you a maximum largest value. It will try to give you your probabilistic values for each and every classes. Now the denominator of the yeah, this one. So again there are some kind of calculations. So if there will be a two classes, so in that case we can go in this manner. Again, softmax with k will be 2. So see, when we are going to use softmax function for a binary class classification, this softmax is getting degraded to sigmoid. See, sigmoid, right? So see here, this is the softmax function here. So here maybe we are going to calculate this thing for a t1 class maybe, or maybe one class, and here we are trying to add both of them, and then after some calculations this is going to get degraded into a sigmoid function. So I think both are having a same kind of maybe I can say concept behind it mathematically. So in that case we can try to use the softmax function for a multiple class, but if there are only two classes, this softmax will get degraded into sigmoid, and in that case we can go with that one, right? Now see, so if there are this much classes, sorry, this is the probabilities. So there is a 0 probability for class 1, 2, 4. See, we are trying to calculate the probabilities of a object, and I have to find, okay fine, so what will be the probability, and actually it will belongs to which class. So in that case we are trying to calculate the probability. So 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, these are all are the different probabilistic values for different classes. So what we will try to do, so if this 0 will belong to cat class or any class, then in that case we will try to calculate it, and in that case we will try to do e to the power that one number, maybe 4, and then e to the power 0, e to the power 2. We are going to sum them up, each and every exponents, and in that case we are going to calculate this for this class, right? So p4 p6 we are going to calculate in that case. Now multi-class classification, so yeah, in that way we are going to use these things. Again, there is, guys, a Swiss function, Swiss a self-gated function. So Swiss function is derived from the sigmoid function itself, and it is defined as this one. So people have derived one another function which is derived from sigmoid function itself. So they have multiplied the inputs with this sigmoid. So people were saying, okay, fine, so whenever we are going to do sigmoid of x, sigmoid is a very a popular one function that people were using in ancient time. So people were thinking, okay, fine, so sigmoid is a good. Again, ReLU is also giving a very good results. But if we are going to multiply here the inputs directly, in that case there is a huge possibility that we will be going to get a very good kind of output. And in that case, they have defined this Swiss function, a self-gated function. And this Swiss design was inspired by the use of sigmoid function for gating in LSTM. So see, if whenever we are going to study about RNNs, recurrent neural networks, in that case there is a LSTM architecture, and for LSTMs and highway networks we are going to use this kind of a Swiss function in their maybe dense layers. So for a different purpose, people have defined a different kind of maybe activation function. So this is a ReLU, right? ReLU, this graph, violet graph, and this blue graph is for Swiss function. So here it is going to give you a exponent kind of thing, exponential curve, and here also. So in that case it will try to give you some kind of a flavor which is regarding sigmoid function. So in that case it will be good for some kind of different problems, different tasks. Again, advantages, so maybe there are some pros, cons, you can try to go with that one. Now soft plus activation function. So for a soft plus, actually the soft plus function is similar to the ReLU function, but it is relatively smooth. It is unilateral suppression like ReLU. It has a wide acceptance range, 0 plus infinity. So this is the equation of a soft plus function where fx will be logarithmic of 1 minus exponent of x. If I can try to compare it with the ReLU, so this will be a ReLU, and this will green graph will your soft plus function. Again, max out activation function. So max out the max out activation function don't goes with the linear combination inputs, but it gives the maximum input among all different inputs coming from various neurons. So see, whenever we are going to pass any kind of data with any kind of maybe a node neuron in a forward pass, in a feed forward connection, see, there we are always going to calculate a linear mix of input, and that linear mix of input, see, this is the linear mix of input w1x plus b1 plus this one, and whatever inputs we are having, we are going to add them, and this linear mix of input is getting inside the neuron. So whenever this type of input is getting inside the neuron, and if we are using max out activation function, it will not consider the linear combination, but it will try to give you only that value which is having the maximum input, which is highest, which is having a largest value. So in that case it will give you a maximum value, maximum inputs among all different inputs. And one relatively popular choice is the max out neuron introduced recently by Goodfellow. Yeah, so there is a Jan Goodfellow, which is a very I can say a person who have contributed in the fields of a deep learning. And Jan Goodfellow, there is a deep learning book he have also written. So Jan Goodfellow have introduced this kind of a maybe a max out activation function. So that generalizes the ReLU, and it's a leaky version. So again, for modifying some kind of things maybe, so they have introduced this new function. Now again, guys, generally speaking, these activation functions have their own advantages and disadvantages. Fine. Now guys, so again here we have introduced this too many kind of different activation functions, guys. So what is happening here, that people will always getting confused that whether to use sigmoid, whether to use a tanh, whether to use a ReLU, whether to use a maybe a other leaky ReLU, or maybe p ReLU or e ReLU, or maybe other. So see, uh, there are two different functions or three functions that we can try to use. So if you are dealing with a regression problem, so in a output layer we can go with a ReLU activation function. In a output layer we can go with a ReLU function. We can also go with a linear activation function. Maybe y will be mx plus c. So in case of a regression problem, we can go with ReLU. We can go with y will be mx plus c. We can choose in between these two. Whichever is going to give you a better result, we can use them. We can use that one, right? See, if there is a classification problem and if there is a binary class classification, we can use sigmoid. If there is a multiple class classification, we can use softmax in our output layers. Now coming to our dense layers. So in terms of a dense layers, you can use any of the activation functions. There is no any hard and fast rule. There is no any better, there is no any best activation function which you are going to use. So whichever, you have to do some kind of experiment. You have to do experiment each and every activation functions with yourself, with over your data inside your network, and whichever function is giving you a better result, you can go with that one. A better result means that a smooth gradient, a slower speed of calculation, right, and a very good accuracy. So this will be, I can say, a performance matrices for choosing I can say an ideal activation function for your use cases. So whichever will going to give you a very good result, you can select that one. So this is my final conclusion. No any activation function is good or no any is worst. Each and every have its own purpose. So we can go with only that one which is giving a very good kind of accuracy. Now guys, I think I have explained each and every multiple, I can say, activation functions. Now maybe in our next session we will be, I can say, talk about some different loss functions. So some people were they were asking about this particular notebook. So again in this notebook, so we have to do some kind of, maybe I can say, some kind of actually we have to do improvements, right? So that's why I'm not actually giving you this thing. So just wait for 1 or 2 days guys, right? And then I will be going to give you these things. So maybe in a tomorrow session I'm going to discuss this loss function. So whatever different multiple losses function are available, we are going to see all of them, and then we will be moving forward to optimization part. So in same session I will try to cover the optimizers, what is the role of optimizers in a deep learning, and what are different optimizers like as BZD, SGD, MBGD. We are going to cover each and everything in a very detailed manner. Then again we will also try to look over the concept of momentum, that what is the momentum and how we are going to use these things, and how these things are going to give you some kind of a benefits. So we will be, I can say, I'm going to explain each and everything in a very detailed manner. So just wait for maybe future classes. And people whoever are actually new here, just try to subscribe our channel, because again I am bringing this initiative just for you, right? There is no any kind of benefits I'm looking from these videos, these sessions. I'm not looking for any kind of monetizations, not any kind of publicity. I'm actually just thinking about the community. So people who are well and good in terms of machine learning, but in a deep learning, they are lacking too much theoretical concepts, guys. And what I believe is, so if I'm knowing something, so it's completely fine that I have to help each and every buddy who is lacking these things. So guys, I think actually my initiative will try to help each and everybody who is who are having some kind of interest in deep learning, or maybe they are looking for making a career transition into data science. So again these things will help you a lot if you are going to crack some kind of interviews, guys. And in that case, these whatever things I'm going to explain here, these things are very much, I can say, important if you are going for an interview, maybe for ML, maybe for a DL, maybe for a data scientist. People are going to ask lots of things about these things, right? So I think guys, there are a couple of things that we have to discuss, lots of things. After this theoretical explanations, I will try to discuss about TensorFlow, because each and everything, each and every mathematics we have to perform with the help of some libraries, some kind of frameworks, and so TensorFlow will be one of them. PyTorch will also comes to picture, but first of all we will go with TensorFlow, we will go with Keras, and then in a very first place I will try to explain you how to create, how to design a neural networks for a regression kind of task, or maybe for a classification kind of task. So we can go in that manner guys, and then we will try to train each and everything. We will try to use Colab or maybe any kind of a GPU architectures, and then we can show each and everything. And after this ANN guys, as this ANN will getting completed, so in that case I'm going to I'm going to cover CNN part. CNN means convolutional neural networks, whether we are going to study about various state of art architectures. Maybe we will just try to start from a very basic, very scratch, how convolution is getting performed, what is the pooling, padding, these kind of things, and each and every architectures, each and every research papers we will try to follow, we will try to discuss. I will show you each and everything in this sessions guys. And guys, so basically if you are feeling any kind of problem in I think in understanding these things, you can try to drop me a mail, sorry, not a mail, you can try to drop a comment there, or maybe you can ask your queries, and I will try to fulfill your your requirements in our next session. And what you guys think about these classes, these sessions? If you are having any kind of feedback, maybe drawbacks, you can try to share in the comment section. And again guys, if you are coming here, if you are watching the videos, and if you are not subscribing the channel, it's not completely fine, right? So if I'm going to give some kind of efforts for you, if I'm going to do some kind of work for you, then I think a like or a subscribe is needed, right? So subscription and like, two things are needed, right? So yeah, try to give us a like, it will help us a lot, it will motivate us a lot. And then in that case I will try to make progress in this sessions, and then we will try to cover each and everything in a very detailed manner guys. Again, it's just a beginning of our classes, so basically there will be a various people who are not who are just completely beginner, and understanding each and everything is a hectic task for them. So that's why I'm not trying to explain lots of things in just a small period of time. So just we have to go in a very slower way. In that way I will be able to explain each and everything. So that's fine guys, I think this is all from my side. Now I think I have to sign out from this session, and then we will meet in a later session. So yeah, like the video. If you are new here, please subscribe it, and also try to share its link with your friends, family circles, and whoever person who is interested into data science, machine learning, deep learning. Just try to share with them, and yeah, learn these things, revise these things. I'm going to share this notebook maybe not today, but tomorrow after this optimizers class maybe, right? Because I have to do some kind of improvements here, and if you are going to get some kind of maybe good things, sorry, bad things, it will not be good for you. So that's why just wait for some couple of days, and then it will be yours, right? Okay, so thanks for attending this session. Now bye for this time, we will meet in a later session.